What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video, another team review. You guys, today we're looking at a draft from last season, different waiver moves they made throughout the season, different trades, trying to see if we can take anything away from different drafts last year and apply them to this year. I haven't done one of these in maybe like 2 or 3 weeks because I want to make sure that there is an actual takeaway from every draft. I don't want it to be exactly the same, and I do have one for you today. Before we do that, have to do the stat of the day. We've got yesterday's stat, have on the screen over here. You guys won't be able to see it, but I have it up. I said, who was the oldest tight end to ever post over 900 receiving yards in a game? Answer was in a game, in a season. That would be incredible in a game. And Tony Gonzalez was the answer. I believe I was testing the stat for 900 yards and 1,000 yards. I think he was the answer for both of those. But at age 36, he had 900 receiving yards in a season. John Jacobs on YouTube, and then at Jas Sleepy on Twitter. Remember, you guys can answer this on YouTube or on Twitter, and I'll shout both of them out in the next video. Today's stat: last season, how many running backs played at least 10 games and averaged over 60 rushing yards per game? How many running backs across the entire league? All right, let's do this breakdown. So I have the team up on the screen here, and then we'll kind of go into the waiver moves and the trades. The big one here is trades, though, so we'll get to that part a little quicker than usual. The draft, nothing like crazy. I feel like it was a relatively standard draft. The bust in the first round of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but then really solid in the middle rounds: Tyreek Hill, Miles Sanders, Jonathan Taylor, Ridley, DK Metcalf in the 6th, David Montgomery in the 7th, a bust in AJ Green in the 8th round, but then back to hitting Antonio Gibson in the 9th round. Starts to fall apart a little bit, but let's be honest, that happens in almost every league. Once you get into this 10th, 11th, 12th round range, you're not expecting to hit on these picks. I believe once you hit like the 8th round, it's around a 25% chance of hitting. And by hitting, I mean points per game in the top like 30. Like, you're just very unlikely to hit this late. But a few minor takeaways here. So Big Ben, I mean, that's like fine. He was taking a quarterback then. He said one of his bigger regrets, which we will get to, is that he waited on quarterback, but then also took one in the 10th. So it's kind of like a weird range, right? Like, if you're going to wait on quarterback and not take an elite option, the 10th is kind of an odd spot to get one because you like just missed out on the really good ones. And now you're taking one not that far later that's not that great. So it's like, if you're going to wait, like wait till the very end of the draft. So that was one mistake. We see Hayden Hurst in the 11th. That was fine. Both the Bills and the Patriots, obviously you guys know I don't like that. He acknowledged that in the email that, listen, wouldn't do that going forward. Wait till the end to take the defense and definitely only take one of them. Jonnu Smith, again, I understand a lot of people like doing this, just saying, I don't know who's going to be good at tight end. I think both of these guys could be solid. Let's just take both, and then one of them should hit. But what we typically see is that there's like 2 or 3 good tight ends every year. They're typically the higher drafted tight ends. It's very unlikely that you're going to draft a tight end really late and he's just going to explode. You're probably just going to take both options. They're going to be roughly similar. You're going to end up dropping both or just one of them, and they're going to be the same. And it's just not worth, in general, doing this. And when you see it, I mean, look at this range, like 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th round. All of this effectively turns into a dead zone most of the time. That's the thing. It's like, you're not being safe by doing that. You're probably going to drop both the Bills and the Patriots at some point. You're probably going to drop both of those tight ends, or at least one of them. So if the most likely outcome is that you lose 3 or 4 of those picks, I would prefer to just shift that down. If you're going to wait at tight end, wait at tight end. Always take defense late, kicker late, and maybe shift up like the Boston Scott and the Paris Campbell into the 11th and the 12th round and get a little bit better chances of hitting at those spots. And then, of course, just take one of the 2, because I don't think you should take 2 tight ends, 2 defenses. But again, we've gone over that a lot, so that's not the main takeaway here. And then totally fine taking Boston Scott here as a handcuff to Miles Sanders, taking your kicker. Prater's a good kicker. And then Paris Campbell, I think that was actually a really good pick. It was unfortunate he got injured, but if you did see the start of the season, if he had not gotten hurt, that would have been a very good pick. So not a bad draft, definitely. Like, there was still a lot of hits in there, a lot of good picks, and in general, a relatively good strategy just attacking those wide receiver and running backs early and taking ones that we thought were going to be pretty good, and a lot that ended up being really good in those middle rounds. So I think that was a really, really good draft. For waiver ads, had some really nice ones. So before week 1 adds James Robinson, of course, it depends on when your draft was, like when Robinson was available. If you drafted much closer to the beginning of the season, he was definitely going at the end of most leagues. Definitely not early, but he was definitely going. But if you were drafting any time like early August, James Robinson was not on anyone's radar because at the time you had other running backs that were ahead of him. Now we lose some of them to COVID, we lose some of them to injury, but definitely a good ad for week 1. Adds Gaskin, adds T. Higgins, Chase Claypool, J.D. McKissick, who he ends up starting in both of his playoff games, which we will get to, and then Logan Thomas, who he flexed in the championship game. He did not specifically say, but looking at the scoring, I am pretty sure, at least from like my memory right now, I'm pretty sure it was a full PPR league because I think looking at the score of McKissick, you're not starting McKissick obviously in a standard league, but in full PPR, he had so many receptions that he was actually pretty solid last season. The trades, though. This is the biggest thing from this team. Now, we've seen a lot that I've brought up that they had just exceptional trades, like just a putrid draft sometimes, but saved themselves in making exceptional trades, and that's what got them to the championship. Almost the opposite for this one. This guy got destroyed in trades. You're going to see how much he gives away and what he gets in return, and we're going to go over kind of the thought process there. So, starts off, he has a two-way deal. So if you look and you see Tyreek Hill and Montgomery for Mark Andrews, you're like, is this guy an idiot? It was because it was also part of a deal where he was packaging that Mark Andrews piece and Robinson for Kelsey. I'm pretty sure in his email he was saying that was already worked out. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to end up trading him away. It was like, I have this deal done for Kelsey, and that's why I'm doing this, because no one was trading Tyreek Hill and David Montgomery for Mark Andrews, right? So as that package deal, though, it still ends up being Tyreek Hill, David Montgomery, and James Robinson for Travis Kelce. And I know I love Travis Kelce. I love trying to get him on the team. But I think most people can agree that he lost that deal. Hill ends up being amazing. Montgomery to close the season was one of the most valuable pieces you could have. James Robinson, obviously, for like the entire season was one of the most valuable pieces you could have. And so I would say that he lost this trade. Next up is a trade that he does actually end up winning. Trades away Clyde, his first round bust, and Hurst for Josh Allen and Michael Thomas. Now, he said this was a person who definitely needed, this was obviously when Thomas was injured. He knew that he needed the upgrade. The person was high on Clyde still and high on Hurst. Needed that upgrade at tight end. This was definitely good, and he actually offered, he said, Jonathan Taylor. So he said the original deal was sending away Jonathan Taylor and Hayden Hurst for these two, and the person declined. Said they really wanted Clyde instead. Obviously, that ends up working very, very nicely because he ends up keeping Jonathan Taylor, who just explodes down the stretch. And he said that basically he realized the Big Ben mistake, that he ends up taking Ben late in the draft, but like too early to where it wasn't a great pick. And then he just needed an upgrade. And so he was hesitant to do this because Clyde was someone that we valued pretty highly, but it ends up that this one definitely worked out in his favor. Another one that doesn't work, he went after McCaffrey. And so he says, I'm going to trade away all my running back depth. Miles Sanders, Myles Gaskin, Antonio Gibson. Trade them all away for Christian McCaffrey. Of course, we know how the season ends up turning out. McCaffrey comes back from injury and then gets hurt again. Never gets fully healthy. Can't really be used for basically the entire season, and probably the entire season that this guy had him for, because he didn't draft McCaffrey, so he didn't get those two really nice games to start. So that doesn't work out either. So really just getting destroyed in the trade market. And then his final trade, trades away Calvin Ridley for Marquise Brown and Dobbins. He said that he got destroyed in this one as well. I don't think it was that bad. Like, he probably lost, but at least Dobbins did really well to close the season. Again, I think this was full PPR, so Dobbins was much better as you moved towards standard scoring. In PPR, he wasn't catching anything, so it wasn't actually that good. And he didn't actually even end up using Dobbins because he was starting McKissick, who was outscoring Dobbins. So loses this trade as well. And he also said, He was originally going after Devonta Adams, but that person just would not give up Adams, and so he had to settle for Marquise Brown and Dobbins instead. He was trying to get Adams, it's just he couldn't get a deal done for him. But if we look at all of these deals, like he gets destroyed, right? But what was his plan? His plan was exactly what we had talked about last season. He had a ton of really, really good players. I mean, he was able to trade away. Like, this is a really good team. Trade away Miles Sanders, Robinson, Montgomery, Gaskin, Gibson, Clyde, Tyreek Hill, Calvin Ridley. All of those were pieces he was able to trade away. Why was he doing that? He was trying to acquire a core: Josh Allen, Michael Thomas, McCaffrey, Kelsey. He was basically saying there's a realistic chance that Michael Thomas is a top 3 wide receiver, McCaffrey is the number 1 running back, we have the number 1 tight end in Kelsey, and Josh Allen was effectively like a number 1, maybe, I don't remember exactly what he finished, but definitely like a top 3 quarterback for basically the entire year. So he was just saying, here are all my positions, I'm going to get a top 3 option at all of them by trading away my depth. What ends up happening is Michael Thomas barely plays, and when he was playing, it was with his backup quarterback. McCaffrey never plays while he has him, and so he's really getting 2 core pieces in Allen and Kelsey, but he gave up so much to get them that it was definitely a negative to his team. So basically, here's my takeaway from all of this. When he's next season, he's asking himself, what should have I done? And actually, before we go over that, I'll just really quickly, I'll show you. This is the end of the championship team. So as I said, Josh Allen quarterback, Kelsey tight end, doesn't end up trading away Jonathan Taylor, kind of just fills in the rest of his roster. He does win the championship, but ultimately I do believe his team would have been better because he could have played Logan Thomas at tight end, who was doing solid towards the end of the season, and then he would have had much better options at running back and wide receiver. And if you want to see his path to the championship, it's right here. Bye in the first round, squeaks out a win in the semifinals. Not even a close victory. It was a dominant victory in the finals. But again, the question you'd be asking, right? You go through a season like that, a lot of people would say, well, should I do that again? Clearly, if I had done nothing in the trades, my team would have been better. I mean, I could have put up 175, won by 100 points in the championship. But the takeaway is process over results. Technically, the result was there, right? I'm saying result in this case as bad. Technically, the result was there because he won. But the result in his mind from these trades was that they didn't work out. Over and over again, when he was trading for a stud, that trade was not beneficial to his team. It happened 3 out of 4 times. And so too many people will look at that and just completely abandon that strategy the next season. They'll say, listen, last year I was drafting a really strong team, but I ended up giving it all away in the trade market. I just shouldn't trade next year. Or I should be the one getting multiple pieces for one guy. Or maybe every trade just needs to be even. Just looking at what happened to them last season and just projecting that going forward, saying, well, that's what's always going to happen since it happened once. No. You have to have a process over results standpoint. The process here is correct, I promise. Packaging multiple players in for one stud and sometimes the number 1 at a position is going to work out for you more often than it doesn't. You can find pieces on free agency. You can build a deep enough team because, listen, it is March. You guys are watching this video. I guess it'll be posted on March 19th. Maybe you're watching it the week after that or a few weeks after that. The vast majority of people playing fantasy football are not doing that, right? So I have to think. You're going to have a decent draft. You're going to draft a deep team, a quality team. You're going to make smart moves on free agency, and you're going to have decent ability in the trade market. So you can afford to miss on some of these deals. You can afford to trade a few players for Christian McCaffrey because I think you can make up for it in free agency. I think you could do future trades to make up for it if it doesn't work out. I think you have a deep enough team in the draft to make up for it if it doesn't work out. But when it does work out, you win the championship. And even with our guy here, even when it doesn't work out, you can still win. It's going to be difficult. If you traded for McCaffrey last season, it'll be difficult. But as you guys know, I won the championship in one of my leagues where I drafted Christian McCaffrey first overall. Okay, he was on the bench for the entire year, and it was a team I owned. We still dominated the entire season. So we're good enough at doing this and getting over some of these busts that it is always worth going after these studs for multiple pieces. And the larger takeaway is just the overall thinking there. So I know you guys have heard, and you probably trust that process of multiple players for one stud. But what about different positions? What if you drafted a running back in the first round last season and he busted? Like you drafted like this guy, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 7th overall, I think is what it said on the screen. And he busts. Don't take that and say, well, you can't take a running back in the first round because when I did it last year, it didn't work out for me. Or if you took George Kittle early last season, well, I can't take a tight end early because it didn't work out for me last season. Or Lamar Jackson. Well, I can't take a quarterback early because Lamar wasn't great for most of the season and it wasn't worth it, right? These are anecdotes. These are one player that you took. But had you taken Kelsey over Kittle, it would have been dominant. Had you taken, I guess he couldn't take Derrick Henry, but another running back that did really well in the first round, had you taken them instead of Clyde, well, that would have worked out. And your thought process would be completely different. So you can't just look at one little thing that happened to you in one season and just project that going forward. Because if you drafted McCaffrey last year, you were correct. If you drafted Barkley, you were correct. Didn't work out, you were correct. So I think we just need to remind ourselves when we're in the draft, when we're doing things next season, process over results. If you're sitting there in the draft and you're like, listen, this has not worked out for me historically, but if I'm thinking about this pick, I genuinely believe it's the correct move to make it. Don't think about the anecdotes of what's happened to you. Think about the overall trend and the overall draft. What do you think is correct? So that'll be the end of this one. Hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, how about hitting the like button? And how about subscribing to the channel if you're new? Thanks for watching.